Welcome to Orbitals, an astrology podcast. I'm your host, William Holloway. In today's show, we are going to discuss the astrology of Israel and Palestine. With me to discuss and dissect is Abigail White, the Keen Witch. Thank you for joining.
Thank you for having me.
And Ellie, Burck of Saturn Season Astrology. Thanks for coming back. Good to see you.
Thanks for having me back.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for being part of this. This is a topic I wanted to cover for a while, but also it gave me a lot of anxiety because I just want to make sure it's done right. So I'm really glad that you two are here to join me. Before we look at any charts, I wanted to get some information out of the way. For anyone who doesn't know, or maybe only knows some of the history, I thought I would break some stuff down. First off, I really wanted to talk about the definition of Zionism because I think that's really important to understand in this moment. So Zionism is a nationalist political and ideological movement that advocates for the self-determination of the Jewish people in support of a Jewish state in their ancestral, quote-unquote, ancestral homeland, the historical region of Palestine. Zionism emerged in 19th century Europe as a response to widespread anti-Semitism and the rise of nationalist movements. While traditional Judaism is a religion rather than a nationalist identity, some Jewish thinkers sought to redefine Jewish identity in national terms and advocated the establishment of a Jewish homeland in Palestine. These ideas gained momentum after violent organized attacks in Eastern Europe and were later championed by figures such as Theodor Herzl. Zionism was initially controversial among Jewish communities, with many Reform, liberal, and religious Jewish leaders rejecting the movement, arguing either for greater assimilation into European society or for preserving Judaism as a religious tradition rather than the nationalist project. For centuries, Palestine was part of the broader Arab and Islamic world, and from 1517 until World War I was governed by the Ottoman Empire. During this period, the population was overwhelmingly Muslim, with Christian and Jewish minorities living throughout the region. Jews comprised only a small percentage of the population prior to the large-scale immigration associated with the Zionist movement. Palestine already had an established indigenous society before modern Zionist settlement began in the late 19th century. Zionism evolved from a cultural and nationalist movement into a settler colonial project. Support for Zionism grew not only among Jewish nationalists, but also among influential figures in Britain whose geopolitical interests aligned with the weakening of the Ottoman Empire. These developments culminated in the 1917 Balfour Declaration, which endorsed the establishment of a Jewish national home in Palestine. This marked a turning point, transforming Zionism into a political project aimed at creating a Jewish state despite the presence of an existing Arab population. The myth that there were no Arabs in Palestine, or that there was so few that apparently didn't mind just leaving, persisted and still does to this day. During the early days of the Kennedy administration in Washington, the U.S. government began to exert pressure on Israel to allow the return of the 1948 Palestinian refugees to Israel. The official U.S. position since 1948 had been to support the Palestinian right of return. In fact, already in 1949, the Americans had exerted pressure on Israel to allow the return of the Palestinian refugees and impose sanctions on the Jewish state for its refusal to comply. However, this was a short-term pressure. As the Cold War intensified, the Americans lost interest in the problem until JFK came into power. He was also the last U.S. president to refuse to provide Israel with vast military aid. After his assassination, the faucet was fully open, a state of affairs that led Oliver Stone to allude to an Israeli connection to the president's murder in his film JFK. More recent events can only be fully understood, and this is super important throughout this entire discussion, that more recent events can only be fully understood with the broader historical context of Zionism, colonialism, and Palestinian resistance, which must be noted was always based on anti-colonialism rather than anti-Semitism. The unresolved tensions between competing national identities, historical narratives, and visions of the future continue to shape both Israel and Palestinian society, making the conflict one of the most enduring and contested, quote-unquote, political struggles of the modern era. And I say that in quotes because I don't believe the right to exist should be political, but unfortunately it is. So that was my little spiel. Uh, is there any important stuff before that I might have left out? I know there's a lot, but I tried to really distill the history there.
I mean, I think we'll get into it probably as we, further discuss stuff. Cause like you said, there's an unlimited well of information.
Yeah, a lot. There was a lot of Jewish people in the community I grew up in. My best friend was Jewish growing up. Her stepfather literally escaped the Holocaust. His entire family was murdered. Understanding how intense, where a lot of the passion comes from. I mean, it's understandable to an extent why so many at the time felt that this was the only option, that because nobody wanted um, uh, the Jews after the Holocaust. There's this myth that like everybody wanted to like welcome them in, and there was so much anti-Semitism all over the world that it just wasn't at the time didn't seem like much of an option. But so they were so you had Semites, a lot of them Christian nationalists who advocated for this because it fit into their biblical myth about
Well, and I'm from an evangelical family.
mm,
So what people also don't understand is the founding of Israel, it fits in with a very kind of dark death cult idea that once we can corral, and this is very genocidal, once we can corral all the Jews in Israel, then Christ will come back. They'll get wrecked,
right,
which big fun. And even in my family, it's interesting because my parents are like their own mini cult. So I have like an interesting perspective. While they were like, yeah, Israel's a thing, they also recognized that it was manufactured. They were like my parents are very much, I won't put into it, but like very much like will devil's advocate and also believe it at the same time. So
mm,
a lot of what we know now is like support for this is actually not innately Jewish. It is the Christian nationalist agenda and also actual anti-Semitism
yeah,
of separation and segregation within culture and society of religious groups. And so, when people are like, oh, there's so much support, it's like, oh, I know those people and they want them dead.
right. That's the
Um,
thing. It's about the rapture. Like it's
yeah.
all about
And
like
the rapture is not even like biblical, which is what's
right. It's not even yeah.
crazy.
So it is political, right?
Yeah,
Like,
very political and also very, like, as you mentioned, very rooted in colonialism and white supremacy and the idea of segregation.
well, do we want to start looking at charts? Let's start with the chart of Israel. So I want to be clear that like the chart for Israel is it's much more accurate. Whereas the Palestinian chart we have, as you were saying, Abigail, they didn't officially have independence, even though that was declared in Western terms in 1988. But that's the chart that most people use, even though they've been around a lot longer than 1988. So I just want to make that clear.
Well, and I think it's interesting just even starting to look at this chart, just starting with the Pluto Saturn conjunction and the 11, you know, just talking about the way the Palestinian charts are less kept track of. It's hard to find times for some of them when looking up information. So much of it is obscured. you know, Israel is functioning within the imperialistic colonialist powers with the Saturn Pluto conjunction, with this kind of tying into these deeper underlying structures. And so, I think starting out just kind of understanding that they are playing by the playbook that we are most familiar with. And their chart, for me at least, reading it very much plays by the playbook of imperialism. Even, the notes that you sent over before this of how they like preempted um a law being created in the Western world to create the state of Israel because they already had the information of when this thing was going to happen because they had inside intel. And so when we're looking at like the chart of Israel versus Palestinian charts are a response to oppression, and Israel's chart is a very uniquely planned system and timing of oppression. Like they picked the timing for this chart. And in your notes, even like the person who, I think it was Ben Gurion,
Mm,
The person who set up this whole thing very specifically picked 4 p.m. and was
mhm.
very like regulated about how this is set up. So I think it's important as we look at these charts to be like, this is a game plan, right? And
Yeah.
an agenda in a big way. And I think as you look at the chart, you're like, oh, it is a game plan agenda. The moon close to Pluto and the position of Mars and the sun, even in there. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I'm gonna read off the main points of this chart for anyone who's listening and not watching. The Israel chart is for May 14th, 1948, 4 p.m., Tel Aviv, and it gives us a Libra rising, ruled by Venus and Cancer in the 10th house, the very top of the chart. We've got Neptune in the first house. The sun is in Taurus in the ninth house, also ruled by that Venus and Cancer in the 10th house. And its opposite, Chiron and Scorpio. The moon is in Leo in the 11th house, co-present with Mars, Saturn, and Pluto. We've got Saturn and Pluto loosely conjunct in Leo in the 11th house, square the nodes.
Yeah, that the nodals, like, you can edit this part out if you want. If this was a person, I would think they were a pain in the ass. I'm sorry. I would like, and they would probably think they were a pain in the ass too. But if you want to edit that out, you can.
No, I like it. I think it's helpful to see these as people sometimes.
But I think they, if this was a person, I think they probably would think they were a pain in the ass as well. I'm not sure they would really do anything about it, but I think they would think that. Um, yeah, that square between the nodes and Pluto and Saturn, it just feels incredibly difficult and such a public house.
Hmm.
Mm. Yeah, yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, something that also struck me is how isolated Venus is. Venus
Yeah,
is some of the better placement, I would say, as far as like, oh, something warm and fuzzy, and it's in the 10th where it's very visible. But if you look at it by degree and by, the only thing that it has direct contact with is part of fortune in Capricorn, which is a
right.
place, not a planet.
Right.
And so there is this kind of externalized image that is very divorced from the rest of the body. So it's almost like the thing that they kind of uphold the most, which is these ideals and this very kind of Cancerian, we're taking care of people. Also the kind of storyline of them welcoming in Holocaust survivors, which a lot of articles have come out in the past few years about how actually Holocaust survivors are not treated well and are
Mhm.
actually treated quite poorly. And a lot of them are close to homelessness and like unable to like make their way. So like this kind of dialogue in this very visible place. But then when you look at the rest of the chart, you're like, oh, that's the least connected planet. And
Yeah.
it's ruling the chart.
And
It
it's
is the
ruling the chart.
and it's ruling the chart. And so I think it really speaks to, and the thing that it's closest to by if we're going to talk about anything is Neptune,
Hmm.
which is by that little square. And it's not close. It's in a rough orb, depending on how much power you give Neptune. And so there is this measure of kind of like what we see in the 11th and how they actually interact with people and interact with groups is very different from how they present and how they kind of the story that they tell. We look at like what's happened recently. At first they were like, we've never bombed a hospital in our life. And now guess who doesn't have any hospitals? Right. It's this very divorced from reality type of feeling, which is the feeling that you can get when you're talking to people about this subject. When it
Yes.
comes to the Venus aspect and you're discussing it, a lot of people are completely divorced from reality or even just from understanding the history. Like you can argue the complexities of it, but if you don't know what actually happened, it's pointless and it feels very loose Neptune Venus where also, Venus and Cancer where I love a Venus and Cancer, especially if we're looking at this as like a person's chart. I love a Venus and Cancer, but it can be that kind of over accommodating, over performing that can kind of cover up other things in the chart because it is so kind of lush. I find Venus and Cancer to be very lush that
Mm.
I've met people with Venus Cancer and there are other problems, but you won't realize it for a little bit because you're like, oh, there's this beautiful kind of crystal, lovely, tender placement. And then you look at the rest of the chart and you're like, oh, we have issues. We have
Yeah,
we have struggles, we have problems. So yeah, that really stood out to me.
And
totally.
That Libra ascendant's going to want to be palatable. It's going to want to come off. And yeah, yeah. Hmm.
With all of that in mind, looking at that Neptune trine Mercury in Gemini, you think of like the storytelling and the myth building and the persuasiveness that they've had over the years and the stronghold on the story, what their version of their story is that's been created. It just feels very Mercury trine Neptune, right?
Well, also just power in media with the ninth house of like the ability to kind of almost transcend average dialogue and take it to a higher octave of where like, you could read a headline and have no idea what's actually happened in those places because they're not using words that actually like they've removed language in order to accommodate. And then if you look as well, you also have Uranus trying the ascendant in the same kind of, air configuration. And so there are these multiple points in the chart that kind of speak to, shifts and change, also pivots. Israel pivots a lot. And that trine to the ascendant in an air sign to me is giving that ability to kind of like spin like a top in order to like try to maintain equilibrium and keep things balanced. But what's actually happening is you're just moving very quickly.
I love that visual, the spinning top. The first thing that really stuck out to me when I first saw this chart was, when you think about the charts of countries, the eighth house is usually about like resources, but also interrelationships with other countries. And the fact that the sun and the north node are in the eighth house, it's like we are setting up shop on this land that we perceive to belong to us. We're going to farm there. This is like a new beginning. But then you have the south node loosely conjunct Chiron. I think Ellie, you said, but never safe, right? Like this feeling of never being safe.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And then that's also square, once again, loosely, but I find with countries, loosely actually, to me, tends to have more impact when we're talking about like a land because it's covering so much ground.
Right.
Mars. And so this kind of perceived violence, but it is a Mars in Leo. There's actual power there. Mars is not debilitated. Now, it's not necessarily special, but Mars does better in fire signs. And so it's like this idea of like feigned weakness, but then you've got Saturn in Leo, Pluto in Leo, Mars in Leo, the moon in Leo. Like it's a powerhouse of charisma and of basically strong arming people. I love my Leos, but I also know that my Leos are, and my own Leo placements are very capable of like pushing the envelope. And so it's this interesting dichotomy between, actual genuine trauma that exists in a cultural psyche, but then this country that has an iron dome and has been allowed to like destroy international law. And they're still like, oh, poor me. And it's like, baby girl, you're the most like, besides like the US Army, you're one of the most highly like funded. If you add defense contracts, probably the highest funded military in the world. And so it's this kind of bizarre moment where you're like, did I miss something?
Well, they were out the gate within a year. They were out like fighting and strong arming their neighbors, and it really shocked the rest of the world. They were surprised how quickly they were able to just kind of like create an army, get in there, and start fighting. I mean, they've been fighting from the minute they got in there.
Well, this brings up an interesting point with Mars trine Jupiter. And the third, to me, Israel is basically a mercenary army. These are not people of the land. They literally basically bring people in through, the birthright trips, through these things. And with, Jupiter being about immigration and immigrants and travel, with this third 11th, this kind of, third 11th house situation going on, they're recruiting people to come in. And that's where their power comes from, is this ability to kind of pull in, and with Jupiter retrograde, whomever. Like it's not, especially in, its domicile, they don't care. They just want more. And so that's also where you get a lot of the cultural violence. There's a lot of articles and news about the rampant pedophilia and the people who escape there having really big criminal histories. It is very much giving Jupiter Jupiter in the third with the trine to Mars in the 11th, they're pulling people in from multiple backgrounds and places, creating a sense of security and then harnessing that and using that as a weapon, basically, which is one of the moments when I'm like, Jupiter, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Also conjunct the galactic center.
Mm. Oh, yeah.
I'll say this, through my research of this stuff, planets conjunct the GC seem to have a sort of protection around them.
Mm.
Jupiter retrograde tends to amplify that protection. So people can take that however they want. But people can take I'm gonna stop myself there, but there is some kind of protection. And I mean that's kind of there's sort of evidence of that just by seeing how they function and seeing how the rest of the world functions, or a lot of the world, not all of the world, but a lot of the world seems to kind of put up with the functioning. And I think there's something about that there that is a
Yeah.
sort of protective. I also about the violence thing and their descendant in Aries. I almost wonder if they see it that way. If that makes sense, or fully see it for what it is. I mean, I feel like they would have to be you'd have to be an idiot not to see it for what like that it is violent, but it's
No,
not.
I would agree. And I would draw us back to the ascendants in conjunct with the sun. And the fact that the descendants in conjunct, they do not have there is a disconnect. And maybe not with the rulers, the people who run it, but with the citizens.
I could see, yeah.
Yeah. Especially with the descendant, to me, it's giving the people, with the rulers, I think they're very conscious of the choices they're making because they also have, my personal perspective is they also have a broader agenda which most leaders do within making money and within leveraging stuff to enrich themselves. So I think the rulers are very aware of what they're doing, but I agree with you. I think the citizens themselves, propaganda is a powerful drug. And Uranus is also in Gemini at 24 degrees, pinging off of this kind of pattern in the chart of 23, 24, the 20 degrees, having a lot of power.
And speaking of that Uranus, they're having their Uranus return,
Yep.
like the United States.
And the U.S. is Uranus is conjunct their Mercury.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah. Oh yeah. Should we look at
like we're fucking each other that way.
Oh, and look at where Pluto is in comparison to their sun and the 8th house. Hello. I mean, also just like the Venus conjunction, Jupiter conjunction, like this was destined to happen. Like the US wasn't necessarily fully involved because we were a little more insular before World War II. We were less concerned with world politics. But just looking at this, Mars conjunct Uranus, Uranus conjunct Mercury, Saturn in there first.
Yeah, and our Mars like poking that Uranus of theirs too.
Yeah.
Very, I don't know. It feels like egging on. I don't.
No,
Yeah.
it feels like getting on. It also feels like there's like our aggression benefits the chaos that gives them a cover. And if you look at the way dialogue is happening now, people are like, oh, Israel's occupying the US. The US is controlling Israel. They're not controlling anybody. They are best friends skipping through the daisies holding hands. No one is occupying each other. They're using each other to get what they want. And so that Mars-Uranus conjunction is this kind of stirred up like, oh no, someone's a victim here. No, that they're both aggressors who are aggressing together and that's their favorite thing. We don't need to do this, but another fascinating, if you've ever wanted to, is to lay a certain orange person's chart over this. It's pretty interesting.
Let's do it.
It is, especially since guess who else is having their Uranus return?
The T-Man.
Yeah. Oh no. When you look at these charts, it's like, oh, what? And also guess what's getting poked again? That Uranus.
Yep.
And also Mercury, it's looser, but Mercury is still conjunct Venus. That Venus constantly gets party every time we pull a chart.
Oh, and the Marses.
Oh, look at Venus conjunct the midheaven. Also considering the stuff going on in Albania with his offspring.
Oh my God. Yeah.
And the fact that it is actually kind of all related to this because this is happening in more than one place. Currently, Argentina, Patagonia is getting hit. Thai, the Philippines are getting an influx of Israeli immigrants due to the war. Put that in air quotes. But yeah, and also like Chiron hanging out in the first with that Jupiter conjunction.
Yes.
So
It's like the perfect horrible storm.
It really is.
Yeah, also South Node conjunct their Jupiter, using the benefits and access to power as a way to feed insecurity and places that where needs are not met.
Yeah.
Huh?
He is intertwined with their chart. And I love that his Chiron is in their first house. It's like they see his weakness, they know how to play him.
Well, especially that retrograde Jupiter,
Yeah.
you
this
know,
chart is so annoying to me.
it is obnoxious.
It is so annoying. It is so obnoxious. And a lot of it, back to that protection thing with his little Jupiter retrograde too, and his moon conjunct the galactic center. I find that so irritating.
Yeah.
That
But
element, it's so annoying.
well, yeah, and also the part where, especially which I attribute partially to his Gemini sun conjunct the North Node, his ability to like screw things up and yet still there's a mythology around him, even though
Yes.
even though it's obvious, where like it doesn't even take any research. Like his own mother was like, this man should be kept away from politics, which is very
Yeah.
Venus conjunct Saturn, actually.
But-
Because I sense that the women in his life fill a Saturn role rather than the men, especially in Cancer.
Wow.
It's giving not a great relationship with mommy. And then also watching women, especially in administration and all those things pandering to him, it's like, oh, you were just like, the women are the cannon fodder of this man's existence, and their little corpses are what's keeping him above water.
Good point.
Yeah.
Should we look at the Palestinian chart?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, I do want to note, because we're not going to look at the chart, but I do want to note the founding of the group that created this. Their Venus is retrograde 6 degrees conjunct their Venus in Cancer, which I find very fascinating.
Oh, okay.
Because we keep seeing every single chart we pull has that Venus Cancer point. And I also want to say it's either South Node or North Node, I can't remember, is also conjunct that. But I think it's just fascinating considering we've
Yeah.
seen that, Venus Cancer constantly get attention every time we pull a chart. And then when you look at this chart, look what we've got at 6 degrees.
That the second chart you were talking about earlier?
Yeah, the one of the founding of
Yes.
the Palestinian Liberation Organization, which is tricky to use as a chart, like I said, because it was over a period of days. They didn't really have minutes or
Time.
Yeah, we don't have time, but their Venus is at 6 degrees of Cancer. And if you look at this, the Chiron is retrograde at 6 degrees of Cancer, which I find very,
Wow.
very telling.
Very telling.
Mm-hmm. And it definitely that Venus retrograde, the internal values maybe different for the values of the time or whatever, or that you're there. Yeah, that definitely.
Well, and also it was established by the Arab countries versus Western countries.
Yeah.
So going against the powers that be to create a system. And the reason the Arab countries came together to support Palestine is because they were worried about immigration and about refugees and like containing the damage that was happening across the Arab states because of Israel. So yeah, it's, if you ever want to look at that chart, it's really fascinating. It's like I said, I gave it a 12 p.m. time just because
We
they
can
don't
look at
have.
it. Let's create it real quick.
Yeah, it's June 2nd. It's between May 28th and June 2nd, but they like officially established it afterwards. So June 2nd, 1964 in Jerusalem. And then I gave it which honestly felt pretty good. I didn't actually rectify it, but I gave it a 12 p.m. time, which
Okay.
Fair
gave
time.
it a Virgo rising, which to me felt like, oh, this feels,
Right. Because it
This-
goes with this chart.
yeah, it felt kind of, oh yeah, that feels right.
Yeah. And it was the
Palestinian Liberation Organization, or you could call it like the Palestinian Charter, but
yeah.
yeah, it's usually called the PLO. But yeah, I was looking at it this morning and I was like, oh, this is really fascinating.
Oh. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really interesting, especially with having a sun in Gemini, which a lot of the other charts, it kind of moves around. But like the Uranus Pluto conjunction, hello, of them kind of pushing back against
Yeah.
the powers and the fact that, that's in sextile to that Venus as well. There's like an element of chaos. And like, while people had a lot of opinions on it at the time, it has been the primary source of like Palestinian independence and identity when it comes to the UN and the broader political world. Um, so yeah, I found this chart really interesting. And if like, obviously we don't know the exact time, so the moon is tricky, but
Right.
either having the moon in a Saturn ruled sign or conjunct Saturn is what we're looking at.
Yeah.
And either of those to me feels very much like this kind of establishing oneself and, setting like, regardless of what everyone else thinks, we're like saying that this is, who we are. And it's also fascinating that we just came out of the Saturn Pisces, another Saturn Pisces transit.
Right.
Is the moon void a course here?
It might be because, yeah, there's no other like later degree placements in
Right.
this chart. Yeah.
Yeah.
I know we don't actually have a time, but I was just, yeah.
Well, here's the deal. As far as history goes, this group has had many iterations, many different leaders, and every time a different, which is actually just very moon-like, every time a different leader takes over, it takes on a different political identity. And so,
Mm.
like, it's also associated with like, I can't remember the name. I'm bad with names. Like the Palestinian Authority. It's a longer name, but they're a sub group of this group. And so it has many identities. It also has had many functions. There has been many times when they have actually done really harmful things to the Palestinian people, which is why people are suspicious. But then again, they've also done many great things. And it really depends on who is at the helm
Right.
and what the ideals are. So it's a good point that it's void, of course. And that's kind of why I stuck with this, because it's a sixth house moon, void, of course, or not,
Mhm.
feels very much like whoever is doing the work calls the ethos
Yeah.
of this group. And even if it does go with the conjunction with Saturn, we're talking about limitations when it comes to group identity. And with the Saturn and Pisces, we could argue other points where like there's an ambiguity around who's in charge and who takes
Yeah.
control, with Pisces being a bit more submerged, I find, for Saturn.
Right. Yeah, it's like maybe not everyone being on the same page or struggling to establish rules that I don't know. I'm trying to think of the right words I'm looking
You're
for.
right. The charter has changed many
Yeah.
times. Back, I can't remember the exact date, but I want to say like in 2018, they were arguing right of return. They were arguing crazy stuff if you're actually advocating for Palestine. They also back earlier were like, oh, let's just ditch it and agree to a two-state solution, when a lot of Palestinians were very against it. And so there is this kind of like inability to like get footing. But with the other placements in the chart, like the Pluto conjunct Uranus, Venus conjunct the North Node, there have been like highlight moments
Yeah.
when they do come together and do something productive, and when people are happy with what they're doing. And so, yeah, there is this. And also, if you look at like Mars conjunct Mercury, this
Right.
constant kind of conflict, well, and then loosely conjunct Jupiter, this constant kind of in the ninth house conflict around ideals, projection, where we're going. Also, if you think about Jupiter as borderlessness or borders, depending on, especially in, Taurus, where are the limits and boundaries of our control and power? And how much do we get to play in the sphere? One big thing where they're like, oh, they get to be an observer at the UN, but they don't get to be a part of the UN,
Right.
which is also very kind of like moon hither and yon. And,
Yeah.
Chiron conjunct the descendant, where not knowing where you belong, not having a place in the world systems. But yeah.
Perfect. Yeah. There's similarities to this chart and the one that is widely used, the one in 1988, which we can look at real brief.
Yeah, let's pull them up together.
Yeah, let's pull them up together here.
I want to say the moon's also void of course in this one as well. The Capricorn moon one,
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
which I thought when I was looking at this the other day, when I was looking at the charts that you sent in the notes, I was like, huh.
Yeah. I mean, and it's void, of course, having just left a little sextile to the sun. And so it feels kind of like almost so,
Uh-huh.
So
Yes.
close. We almost had some kind of symmetry here, something a little more permanent, especially with the Capricorn energy, and then poof, you know, it's just not there.
You articulated that very well.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Sometimes
yeah.
I have a hard time articulating what, so I say something, I'll be like, yeah, yes.
Well, these are Virgo rising charts, and I'm a Virgo rising, so
Yeah.
There you go.
these are my people.
You are locked in. I love that.
Well, interesting. Virgo rising chart, ruler conjunct Pluto is kind of a fascinating take. And then the other one in opposition, we have ruler conjunct Mars. I would be curious to see how many times Palestinian charts rulers are conjunct something spicy,
Yeah,
because
totally.
this seems like a pretty big pattern. And then also, I think just across this conflict, and this is kind of also how I see like rectification. You can do it a lot of different ways, but to me, it's also comparing charts that have dates and times to see how they line up with like, where is Venus? Where's the moon? I bet you could probably rectify all Palestinian charts with probably a void of course moon. That would be my bet.
Makes sense.
Because it would make sense with like also just the way people talk about it, and also talk and kind of diminish the efforts of Palestinian liberation. And they're like, oh, well, they're being manipulated by other people. And it's like, they live in the world like the rest of us.
Yeah.
We all get input from other people. Other people have desires. Other people have interests. But with the void, of course, it's like all these poor babies, they can't regulate themselves. They can't do it themselves. And so it feels the void, of course, mood feels very infantilizing.
I can see that here.
Let's look at the Palestinian independence chart by itself real quick. While this chart is technically through Western eyes, which is very important, I do think that this chart says a lot about Palestine, with this Virgo rising conjunct the South Node, Chiron conjunct a lot of fortune, Jupiter retrograde in Gemini at the top of the chart. And then, of course, the void of course moon in Capricorn.
Well, in the midheavens, almost exactly square the nodes. Like, what are the minutes here? Oh, they're really close. So a very tight, what is it? It's astrological minute 1 and 2. Yeah, they're literally seconds apart from each other. Seconds apart from each other. This how Palestinian independence is perceived and seen in the world, coming up against this kind of deep karmic ancient history, and also them having to prove themselves when their history is so much South Node conjunct the ascendant, so much longer than they're ever given credit for. People are like, oh, well, they beam down and don't have any Western legitimacy because they don't have like some kind of like boundaries or walls. Like Palestine didn't technically have borders, right? They were just kind of, it was a place and different groups lived there, and they were kind of ruled by overlords of different ilks. And with that midheaven square, it's like, this has been here so much longer, but people are constantly asking them to prove themselves.
100%.
That Uranus conjunct the GC. Well,
if I remember correctly, the Israel chart has Jupiter there, right? And so it's once again this kind of disrupting the agenda of Israel, at the time, certain people in Israel agreed on this. They almost instantly backtracked on a lot of their agreements, because this agreement, if I remember correctly, they were supposed to like give back certain places that they had taken. And with this, it's kind of like, throwing a bit of a wrench in someone's plans to have this. And
Black Centauri, the wrench in plans, the wildness. I was going to say trauma. The Uranus here speaks to trauma. It does anyway. Uranus can be trauma as it is, but with the GC's influence, it's like a a twist.
Over the top trauma. Like,
yeah, I've
no
noticed
one
that.
should have to experience this type of trauma.
Yeah.
Well, and also 29 degrees.
Yeah. Which is a whole other adding into that. Yes.
Yeah. It's like, let's just dump more onto this already intense situation. I also think interesting Chiron conjunct part of fortune, which to me reads that some kind of lived experience that constantly gets relived over and over again is somehow, in kind of a twisted way, a benefit where this is happening because of a repeated attempt
Yeah.
on a psyche, on a thing, and also the way in which the language of this independence is worded. I'm sure if you read the charter, there would be a lot of kind of concession in here in order to survive. It's kind
Right.
of giving away a bit in piece here and there in order to kind of greater good their way out of it. Which isn't going to work
No,
with Mars squared, but it is an attempt.
absolutely. But do we want to talk about what's coming for Israel and Palestine?
I would look at the transits,
Um,
pull up a transit chart to kind of just give
yeah.
us a place to start from because
No.
it's pretty telling. Look at where Jupiter is.
Yeah.
And the sun and Uranus entering its, return here, and I find it interesting as we are talking about this, Mars is on their south node, you
Mm.
know,
Yep.
and opposed, heading into an opposition with Chiron, which looks to me, and this is something they've been talking about, which looks to me like a really, especially with, Uranus Gemini, looks to me like a really big push to re-victimize Israel. I think we're going to see over the summer and over the next 6 months to a year, because they've talked about how much money they're going to pour into this. And people are like, oh, there's so many more bots now. And I'm like, oh, just wait. Just wait. They haven't fully unleashed this on us because Israel, if anything, is a planner.
Yeah.
Very, very reminiscent of the planners we have in the US. And
Yeah.
so, to me, especially, I think starting with the Venus Jupiter conjunction, we are going to see an uptick in this story of victimization. We're going to see more stories of stuff in the news that may or may not be true, which is the sad thing, right? There might be really aggressive anti-Semitic attacks in communities, but we are going to have to ask if it really is, because at this point, there have been a couple of very obvious false flags, especially involving like actual IDF soldiers in the
Right.
US. And so, yeah, it's just one of those. And also, look where the ascendant is currently, like crazy down.
And that south node about to go over all of those things in Leo.
Yep. Well,
Yeah.
and then Jupiter will meet them.
Right.
I'm pretty sure right around Saturn, actually, I think is where they roughly get together. I'm fascinated to see
Yeah.
what that is, because it's going to be, like I saw someone else mention online, Jupiter is increased and the south node is decreased. Like, what
Yeah.
time warp are we about to experience?
I know. My eyes just crossed. I'm like, where are we going?
Well, especially in Leo, that's so like bold and brave and,
Look at me.
yeah, courageous. It's like, oh no. Well, and then also, don't we have a Mars retrograde at some point that's about to
Yeah.
be right in there as well? Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which will then be heading, which will be, I don't think it gets to Saturn, but it definitely is, it's definitely hitting their Mars. So all of that happening within the span of a year.
It's a lot.
It sounds kind of counterintuitive, but I wonder with the South Node Jupiter if we're not going to see some kind of media blackout.
Oh, I could totally see that.
Well, a media blackout combined with a media blitz. So lack of information combined with extreme excess information. And then if people who are genuinely committed to the truth are not organized, people getting lost in that, or just giving up, because that's just a lot to deal with. Just disconnecting from it, especially with the South Node being like, and now I'm not participating
Yeah.
in the dialogue. And I think that's going to be the tactic is the tactic we've been seeing in the US, which is overwhelm and misinform. Like
Yeah.
throw so much information and throw so much like garbage information that people just shut down. And so for me, at least as someone who's on the outside, I think those on the outside are going to be hit with a media storm in the next year that's going to be pretty crazy. And we're going to have to get also AI with the trine with Neptune is going to be a big problem with this. They're going to find a way to harness it in a way that I don't think we have been able to recognize yet. The videos get better every day. And what we see on the market is always about a year behind what they have in
Right.
production. So to me, it's like, oh, people are working on something that we don't get to see yet. And we're going to have to be real cautious and careful about what we intake, what we do, and also avoiding with, Leo, making ourselves the center of attention in a conflict that is not about us.
Yes. Well, and I wonder with the South Node going through that Leo house and being the North Node being in Aquarius,
Mhm.
I mean, we're already seeing it. Israel has less support globally than they've ever had. And I
Yeah.
think that's just going to continue to happen. And I think we'll really see it with the South Node and Leo. So while many things are going to happen with that South Node, I do think that might be part of it, you know?
Well, and with Jupiter there, I think there'll be less support than ever, and yet visibly they will be showing more support than ever. Whereas like all you're gonna see in media, like in legacy media is, oh, everyone loves Israel. And then anything slightly below the surface is like, what? I don't think so. And we're seeing these uprisings in other countries that aren't necessarily against Israel itself, but they are against the repercussions of allowing Israel to do what it has done. Like the taking over of land, the corruption, all of these things. A lot of it is spearheaded, at least when it comes to land grabs, by Israel. And
Y-
so we're about to see the consequences of said actions, I think, in a pretty big way, especially if you think about the fact that Saturn is in their seventh house. The consequences of the people they've screwed over are going to start catching up.
Yes. Should we switch out Israel for Palestine?
Mhm.
Which chart do we like more? Do we want the PLO one?
Let's start and see how that goes. I would say the PLO one is actually kind of similar to the 88 one, like you said, in a way, because there's that Chiron Venus thing going on. There are points in a lot of the points there. So,
Yeah,
and they both have void of course moons in Saturn ruled signs.
they sure do. So this is the 1988 one because now they're gonna have it's gonna be in their 12th and 6th house.
Yeah, and to me, that's kind of giving. I think, unfortunately, with stuff in the 12th, it's going to be giving things still remaining hopeless for a bit, at
Yeah.
least on the visible surface, on what
Mm,
we can see in a solar way. However, I think, yeah, on the opposite end of that spectrum with the North Node, I think his stuff is actually changing a lot. I think people are organizing in small ways and building support through Aquarius.
mm,
But for the people on the ground, for the people in the conflict, it is going to be bleak. And I think that's something that's really hard to sit with, of like, help is not going to access them in the 12th. And now once it hits, once Jupiter hits Virgo, maybe I could see stuff like starting to physically shift. But it is very much people continuing to build support in a very kind of Saturnian way and in a very kind of dry way, which is Aquarius, of like small movements picking up steam. Also, as I think it's important to note that Palestinian liberation is also tied to other kinds of liberation. Most police forces have a connection to the Israeli army. Most of
yeah.
the brutalization we see, while it comes from a history of actually slave catching, thank you, you know, the tools that they are now using are Israel's. So, like, resistance to the police is actually, to me, equally supportive to the Palestinian cause. Fighting against police brutality in the US is equally important and has value. And, it's often said that, by many liberation folks, that the Palestinian cause is entangled with everything. Any work that we do in our own little space, in our own little square, to fight ICE, to fight police brutality, to search for equality when it comes to racism in our neighborhoods and fighting against white supremacy. To me, that is very sixth house,
Mhm.
doing the work in your own neighborhood and it affecting in this 12th house way.
Mhm.
But it is very much, North Node, South Node kind of dynamics.
That Jupiter of theirs getting
Mm.
hit the Uranus, transit Uranus, and Jupiter being one of the rulers of their seventh house. This feels like, and I know this transit is a little longer, right? Like it's been going on for a minute, but this feels like changing relationships with other countries outside. Like it feels very much like that. Like they might have, by the time this transit ends for them, they might end up having allies that they didn't realize they had, might end up having enemies that they didn't realize they had. I could see there just being a switch flipping there.
Well, and Uranus is also square the nodes right now.
Yeah, it is.
And it had, it has been for a couple of months, months, but ever since it moved in, it's been squaring the nodes. And so I'm curious to see what happens when that pressure's gone. And I think we're going to actually get what you're talking about, like starting to like actually be visible, because like with Uranus transit, yeah, they do take a minute, but usually you do start to see pretty quickly what Uranus has been up to because of how disruptive it happens to be. Also, it's in the 10th house, so it's in a spot that is pretty easily seen. I wouldn't be shocked if we see early on some backstabbing, but then by the end of the transits, the allies are kind of evened out and settled in. But yeah, definitely seeing switches flipped. And also, I would say that people who you wouldn't expect to support
Yeah.
Palestine.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes. It's going to be some like, well, where the fuck did that come from? Kind of like, yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. That should be very interesting to, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, and also we have the Venus Jupiter conjunction the 11th coming up. There is a pull for empathy from other communities, and even people I think who don't care are at this point kind of being like, that's a lot too much. Even for like someone who's bloodthirsty and who, hasn't unpacked their own violence. At this point, they're kind of like, so all of the stuff that we've been told isn't really lining up. Like, I've even heard, from other people I've talked to and stuff, and even in my own arguments that I've had to have with people, where like the burden of evidence is so strong now that like I barely have to argue, and it's like you can keep arguing, but like you're not going to like change the fact. I'm not even arguing like it's not even an argument anymore of like, an idea. It's like, no, these things have happened and we all know that they have happened. And like you can argue against me, but like you're fighting facts. And I don't really have to, burgerizing me, and I don't really have to do that much. But yeah, I also think it's interesting that, they're going to have their Uranus opposition by the end of this
Yeah.
in the 4th house. And so I also think that what is considered Palestinian identity is also going to change within this.
Good point.
And the Uranus thing to Jupiter, also Jupiter ruling the 4th. It's like, I could see the 4th being like, can also be like homeland, right?
Mhm.
Feels like there could be some changes there too. I'm thinking of the actual layout of it, the way that it is laid out. I could see there being changes as well. I
Well,
don't.
and that's sorry, but that's always been a huge discussion too, right? With them just having Uranus in the 4th house, the boundaries and the stealing and then taking back and then the right of return is just a huge topic.
Mhm. It's yeah, yeah. Mhm.
I also find it interesting because we were talking about like countries. Saturn is in the 8th. And
Mhm.
so it makes me wonder if we're not going to see another push, not right now, but by the end of the Saturn transit, to give Palestine legitimacy and also maybe return some of their citizenship rights, because with the genocide in Gaza, they've lost their ability to even leave.
Right.
And so I wonder if not during, but once it gets out into the 9th house out of the 8th, if we don't see some of that being given back, especially with Saturn going into Taurus, which is very homeland, very where do you belong? And also I find it interesting that, Taurus is in the 9th because it is giving a absolute adoration for the land and a deep, like there's nothing in it, but it's like a deep, like craving for home while being not home, because
Mm.
this idea of like travel and distance in the 9th house, and then Taurus being the one like someone on the couch in their slippers vibe, which I get to say as a Taurus sun. The snacks and the slippers are important. I used to hate the generalization. I'm like, no, it is snacks and slippers.
It is. I'm a Taurus rising, so yeah.
Yeah, it is home. So it is interesting to me. And then also I think Neptune on Mars, we're not going to see, kind of similar to Jupiter over in the 12th. We aren't really going to see what's happening for a minute. We're not going to get hope. And so I think hope is incredibly important in this situation, because you don't come back from stuff like this easily. I saw a video by a disabled creator, which is a very good point, that Palestine is the biggest disability issue of our time. This is generations of people disabled and poisoned by toxic chemicals and missing limbs and being born, specifically with this person talking about cerebral palsy. They have cerebral palsy. And, we're not going to see hope just because of the massive amount of trauma, which is giving to me very Pluto conjunct Mercury, which is in this chart, and also, Chiron conjunct the South Node in Cancer, this kind of immense amount of pain. And also that's in a trine, this immense amount of pain and feedback and the ability to simply process it, Mercury, I think is going to be very difficult. And so not giving up on this situation, not, kind of throwing up our hands while we still have a struggle looking at the current transits to push through to brighter times, I think is incredibly important to not get apathetic about the situation because it feels so hopeless. And like, how do you help thousands of children who don't have a leg or who can't see?
It seems like it's like everybody just needs to quit being an asshole.
Well,
Like all the, like, it's
the
such a simple,
swear.
it's such a simple, right? Like, it's such a simple answer. Like these leaders, quit being assholes. Like I know that's not a simple fix, right?
Well, but if you think about the Israel chart, we have Pluto square the nodes, right? They don't want to not be, right?
Yeah.
The
But
assholism.
it's just as simple as quit being a fucking asshole.
Yeah.
Like, just quit it. So
That's the solution, everybody. Just stop being an asshole.
I mean, that's literally the solution to every one of our problems.
I always said if I created my own political party, it would be the Don't Be an Asshole Party. That's not the name of it. Like,
Yeah.
nice. Be kind, be good to one another.
Unfortunately, power struggles are not
It's not gonna-
attuned. I do find it, so we haven't really talked about it, but the Saturn conjunct Neptune there is really telling in that
Yeah.
chart. And it's kind of juxtaposition with where Neptune is now. I think it's a weird combination because of how Neptune works of like really deep revelation and also not knowing what to do with the information that you're given.
Very good. Yeah. Wow. I mean, we could keep going. I would love to, but there's so much and we only have so much time. Is there anything else we want to talk about before we sign out?
It's always struck me very much like it's a cycle of the abused becoming the abuser. From the history of it and everything, it feels very much that way. And it's like, and we see this in families, right? We see families, the child is abused, they grow up and they become an abuser, or they can grow up and be like, fuck that, I'm not doing any of that. And it seems like here we've seen that kind of happen the other way, the way of becoming the abuser. And it really is up to them to say, we're not going to do this anymore. We're going to stop. You know what I mean? Breaking that cycle.
Yeah. And I do wonder if this generation of babies being born isn't because of the Pluto opposition, isn't the kind of final group. Like I hate to have to put it out for like how long it's going to take, but time is time and you can't just reverse stuff overnight. But I do wonder if that isn't going to be the final kick, is when those kiddos finally get to the age when they can, specifically kiddos who are born in Israel, to throw off the identity that they've kind of been given and to throw off this kind of abuser dynamic, especially depending on where their Saturn is because of that Saturn-Pluto conjunction. So I do think there is hope, but you are correct. It is giving very much like weaponized violence, where like, violence done to me, as someone who came from a very abusive home, like, the excuse of like, and I'm not saying that you were saying it was an excuse, but the excuse of being like, oh, we've been abused, so therefore like hurt people has always upset me as someone who has never hurt anybody. Well, not like intentionally, who has never actively hurt people the way I have been hurt. And for that to have been kind of this apologetic rhetoric about giving a pass for violence because of past stuff. And I think this tragedy of it is it comes from a desire to deny Jewish people the right to assimilate and to join Western cultures as citizens.
Yeah, it's anti-Semitism alive, and that's not okay.
Well, yeah, and if you are, and I'll say this, if you do not use critical thinking, one of the easiest things to fall into this is anti-Semitism, because you see so much violence on Israel's part, and they put Jewishness at the front rather than nationalism. And so
Yeah.
people who do not do the work can easily fall into the very easy response, which is to hate Jewish people, ignoring the fact that there is a rich history of anti-Zionism in Jewish culture. From day one, there has been,
Mhm.
it was a whole other episode, but like early Zionists partnered with Nazis, which
Yeah.
is crazy and counterintuitive. And so I think the tragedy here is that like there is a genuine community in society that needs protecting, but no one needs an ethno state in order
Right.
to be happy, because the world should just be equitable. And instead of handing out, because if we were going to do that, there are so many groups of people who should just get a plot of land, who
Yeah.
should just have massive protection, like Black Americans. Hello,
Yeah.
and the indigenous folks should just get all of it back. Like, you want to make these crazy, you want to, if you want to really follow that path, then Black and brown people get right, which is not what
Yeah.
they want. And so to me, it's just sad because there is a legitimate issue here, but the issue is not the Black and brown, the global majority. The issue is whiteness and the violence of colonialism and the fact that a lot of the cultures who are now oppressed are simply oppressed because they were genuine functioning cultures taken over by highly dysfunctional violent cultures.
Yep. 100%. Love that. Well, I don't love it, but I love the way you said that.
I get it. It's like liking posts on Instagram.
Yeah, I know. I'm like, is this gonna mean that I'm liking this terrible thing that's found? Yeah.
They need to stop with the heart. I'll just say that. They need a thumbs
They
up or
do.
something. Like, yes,
Yeah,
I've
well,
seen it.
back to like the cry emoji. I don't know. Like we can have it more because Instagram used to have options, and then it just
Yeah.
didn't it. I feel like I remember that time,
You mean on messages they do?
or maybe that's Facebook. I'm thinking of where you can choose your emoji.
I think it's
don't-
Facebook. They've changed it so many times. At this point, I have no idea. It's so pointless. The algorithm used to
really-
work, guys.
Not anymore. But that's also another episode.
Oh yeah,
Well, I think
the
we-
way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think we did a good job of covering this. Before we go, Abigail, what are you
Yeah.
working on? What are you doing? How can people find you?
Yes, I'm Abigail White. My name across all platforms is the Keen Witch, Keen, Keen. I do a lot of things. You can blame my midheaven south node conjunction in the 10th. I am an astrologer. I'm a psychic medium. I am a tarot reader. I dabble in pretty much all forms of divination. Currently, what I'm kind of mainly focusing on is I am doing a class over on the Zine Witches post on accessing psychic gifts. This will be a longer series of classes in August that I will have available if you want to connect to your psychic gifts or just have tools to kind of start that journey, because you're not just going to push a button, guys. Sorry. But yeah, I also have a YouTube where I post weekly astrology videos. I also do general tarot readings and other such things as well. If you're interested, I usually do it. I also specialize in past life readings and past life rectification as well. So do a lot of stuff around removing energetic ties and shifting past life energy and karmic ties. So yeah, that's the type of work I do. You can find me on Instagram, YouTube, and yeah. And if you have any questions or anything, I am very much a person who answers DMs. So if you see anything on my pages that you're interested in, you can just ask me a question.
Nice. That's awesome. Ellie, what have you got going on?
You said you had the South Node conjunct your midheaven?
Me
too.
Yep.
I do
And
as
it's-
well.
Yep. In the 10th in Gemini.
Yeah. Yep. Mine's in Libra. So, my midheaven's in Virgo. My South Node is in Libra. So
Gotcha.
they're, right there. I thought that was kind of cool. Okay.
Destined to be together here.
So you can find me on SaturnSeason.com. I do astrology readings, tarot readings. I'm running a class on the Galactic Grand Cross or the Galactic Center that's on July 9th. Find me on Instagram at Saturn Season Astrology, YouTube at Saturn Season Astrology. It's kind of like being asked what you want for your birthday when people ask, what are you doing? And you're like, I don't know. Like, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what I want. But yeah, you can find everything I do on YouTube, Instagram, my website. I'm not as articulate. Here we go.
Yeah, you're fine. Yeah, and you can also find me and book a reading with me at williamhollowayastrology.com. But yeah, I appreciate both of you coming here with me on this topic. I appreciate your wisdom and everything you guys had to say. I could not have done this without you. I thank you very much. Yeah, have a great day, everybody.
Right.
That's-
Thank you.
Thank you for
Bye.
having me.